The second talk of this evening is a theme that Oris actually asked us to talk about, which is very nice to be asked, and it's to talk about sustainability, which is this enormous word, but is a key, one of Oris's key values. And I'm going to try and put that into context for you about what we mean when we're talking about sustainability with a watch company. Then I'm going to tell you a little bit about what Oris do and are doing and how that compares and why we might want to compare it. Then I'm going to finish with a few things that I might like to know more from Oris. Not that the staff will be able to answer them here, but if the executives were here, that's what I'd like to see more of. So very quickly, as I can, what is sustainability in the watch industry and how do Oris apply it? Well, when we're talking about sustainability, we're simply talking about making the world a better place. And when it comes to companies and large organizations attempting to improve their sustainability, what they'll do is they will look at the United Nations 17 Sustainable Development Goals. And many of you might have already heard about this in the organizations you work in. And what an organization will do is picks a few of the 17 goals that apply to the line of business they're in. So Oris is a company obviously that makes and sells consumer products, in this case luxury watches. And so the sustainable development goals that they're interested in are things like emissions and how their carbon and greenhouse gas emissions are, and then also their use of plastic, because they've been a company that's historically used plastic in their products and still uses it in some of their work today. And then what the company tries to do is look at what those UN goals are and then look at what the company does and how its processes, practices, ways of doing business can be improved to meet the long-term goals as laid out by the United Nations. So that's what most companies today are trying to do when they're talking about corporate sustainability initiatives and improvements. Now, what's remarkable about Oris is that Oris are very transparent. Oris have made it a key value of the brand, and they've also published a sustainability report. So the first one was published last year and the second one will be out this year. And that's remarkable for two reasons. The first is that Oris is a private company, so it has no obligation whatsoever to publish this report to anyone. And the second thing is it's a Swiss company, and Switzerland is famous for secrecy, and the watchmaking industry is famous for its secrecy. So it's very interesting that Oris are choosing to publish this report. Now, why would we care that they're publishing the report? Well, we want to know if what Oris is doing appeals to us, firstly, and whether it makes sense, and thirdly, whether we believe them. So one of the criticisms of sustainability initiatives is, are they doing anything to help? Is the company actually doing what they're saying they're doing? So by publishing the report, we can go and read it, see what's in the report, and then we can see if anyone else is doing anything like it. And if they are, then it makes sense that Oris are actually doing what they say they're doing. Another thing we can do is look at the report in comparison and compare them to other watch companies. And I actually have done this today, and it's quite interesting, as I'll come to in a second. So what are Oris actually doing within their report? So if you talk to the staff who will have been talking to their colleagues about it, but also read the report yourselves, the first and obvious thing that Oris have done is calculate their greenhouse gas emissions, and mainly with this kind of company it's carbon dioxide. But what's really impressive about what Oris have done is they've paid for a very deep dive into all of their emissions. Now, many companies don't do this because it's very complicated to imagine, try and work out all the different ways your business and all its different practices contribute to carbon emissions. So a lot of companies just choose a high-level thing and guess, but Oris have had a deep dive. Not only that, they've put in a very firm target of cutting their emissions, and many companies don't choose to do that because it's so hard. So if you just think to yourself, if I actually had a firm target of how next year I would in my daily life reduce my carbon emissions, it'd be very difficult. And of course, if you're a company that's aiming to grow, it's even more difficult. And notably, if you look at both Richemont and LVMH's sustainability report, these are much bigger companies, much more complicated as companies, there's no denying that, but they do not have a firm target to reduce their emissions. They have a target to reduce their emissions per value added, which is very, very different to Oris's firm commitment. It doesn't mean it's wrong, it's just very different. The next area that Oris has focused a lot, which probably won't surprise any of you, is plastic. And that's because I said Oris has a history of using plastic in its products and its packaging and in its stores. And there's no getting away from what they've done before, but they have committed to phasing out all use of what's called virgin plastic and reducing it with recycled plastic, or replacing it where they can with different forms of packaging and different products. So that's the first commitment. But Oris has gone a step further, which is to think about how they can help the Sustainable Development Goal in other ways. And one of the big problems with plastic is plastic waste. So Oris have looked at different projects around the world where they can help use some of their money in terms of direct giving, but also in terms of product development to reduce plastic waste. And that's where the Oris Upcycle comes from. So if you haven't seen it yet, most of you will probably know what it is, but it's a watch where they've taken their classic Aquis line and they've used waste plastic that's been treated, and there's a block of it here, and then cut the dials out of it. Now this is not a way to sort of, it's not a financial decision. This is a way to support a local project, because this way of making this plastic was set up by a small business, a small NGO. And when Oris supports businesses like that in local projects, they help those projects grow, they help them be sustainable, and hopefully that project can go on to bigger and better things. And Oris, in return, get this really interesting watch, and a watch with a story around it, because when you make the dials like this, every dial is unique, and there's already been a couple of people here tonight who said that's a really appealing feature of the watch. And because if you look at the plastic, you get all these different colors, which is also pretty cool, makes the watch very varied. Another thing they've done is with the Servo Volante watch, which we've got there, which was where they've seen an opportunity to take waste, which in this case is a really unusual form of waste, which is deer hides in Switzerland. So deer are shot in Switzerland for both food and animal control. And those hides, a company was formed by two women to take those waste hides, which would have been burnt, and turn them into high quality leather. And Oris have made this partnership to create these straps and create special edition dials for this model of the watch out of this waste product, and it also reduces the air miles of the leather that would have traveled versus their usual suppliers. So this is another example where Oris can have these big sort of vague goals, but tie them to really local projects that also make a great story with the watch, and that the customers might be attracted by, because it's a pretty cool type of leather. Now, the thing that I would like to see from Oris, because when you look at this area, or if you're interested in this area, it's one thing to like read what people say they're doing, it's one thing to compare them to others, but it's then also even better to then go and ask questions about what they're doing now, what's coming next. I would look forward over the next few years to Oris talking more about their suppliers and how their suppliers are thinking about these same challenges, because as many of you will know, Oris do not make every part of the watch. Oris have a supply chain of all the different parts from all different parts of the world as well, and not just Switzerland. And so managing that is quite a difficult job, and then adding on these things like emissions and other environmental concerns is another layer of management. And so hopefully over future years with the sustainability report, we'll see more detail from Oris on that front. And indeed, lots of other companies are doing the same thing. But that's where I'd look. So that's where I'm finishing, and if you might be glad to know. I find this topic fascinating. Lots of people in the watch world say consumers don't care about it, but I think they do. And I think companies like Oris giving these specific products that are tied to it really help consumers who want that option or want to talk more about that option. And we all know big brands, there's lots of big brands in the watch world who don't do anything like this at all. So it is notable that Oris are doing this. And so I hope you can enjoy the rest of the evening, try on some of these watches I've just been talking about, try on the rest of the watches. And I'll finish by saying thank you very much again for having us.